Hey y'all, today we're going to share 3 benefits of writing grants yourself when you're starting a nonprofit. Let's get into it. Hey y'all, this is Tiffany with Boss on a Budget. I help people start their nonprofits and teach them how to raise money when they are literally starting from $0. If you need help with your nonprofit, then you should be subscribed to this channel because I share helpful videos every single week because I want to help you help the people in your community. So if I can help one person or if I can teach one person, then that could literally change the world. So that's why I do what I do. And today I want to talk about grant writing. This is such a juicy topic because so many people, when they start their nonprofits, have so many misconceptions about what a grant can do for them. And also, most people I encounter who are starting up ask me about grant writers. And honestly, if you're super new, you're probably not ready for a grant writer. I did another video that tackled this topic called Do You Need a Grant Writer? And so I'm linking it above. It's my opinion though that when you're super new, there are a lot of benefits to writing grants yourself, and I'm going to share in this video why. And I'm going to share 3 of those benefits in particular. And if you wait to the end, I'm going to share the biggest piece of advice for people who are writing grants, especially if you're new and especially if you're small. I see people make this mistake all the time, so I just want to share one of the things you should do to avoid the common pitfalls I see when people go after grants when they're new. So the first benefit of writing grants yourself and not just relying on grant writers is because writing a grant forces you to write out and describe what you do and why you do it. And one of the biggest mistakes that people make when they start their nonprofit is not being clear for themselves, not being clear for their board and then the public about why their organization is even needed. Too many people rely on the fact that I have a 501c3, so that should be good enough. I'm a nonprofit, so you should know I need help. I'm helping people. What more do I need to say to you? But it's not that simple. You have to be able to describe to people why your organization, because there are so many other organizations doing good work. And when you cannot reveal or be transparent and be open about what you're doing and why it's important, then people don't have an opportunity to figure out if that aligns with what they're interested in, or they just don't have any trust that whatever you're doing is actually what you said you're doing. So it's really important for you in the beginning to get clear on who you serve, why you serve them, and what you do to serve them. And one of my most favorite ways to tell people to write out what they do is just do the what, when, who, how. I always get it mixed up, y'all. The what, who, when, where, how, and why. Like, do all of those things to write out the point of your program, and you need to do it for each program. So some of you guys have an organization, but you're doing multiple things with multiple populations, and what you're doing could be organized in different programs. For each of those programs, you should be identifying the W's, I'll just say that, of your program so that you can describe it to someone else. And when you are forced to sit down and say, this is why my program exists, this is what we do, this is how we do it, this is how we carry it out, it creates a foundation for a lot of things. It creates a foundation for your grant proposals, it creates the foundation for fundraising appeals, it creates the foundation for your budgets, it creates the foundation for your fundraising plan. So I'm going to explain a little bit what I mean by the foundation of it all, just so it can make sense for you. One of the first steps you should be doing when you raise money of any kind is doing a case statement. And everything I just described in terms of breaking down your program, all of that should be included in your case statement, because in that document, that's you making a case for why your organization is even needed. That's you making a case to prove to somebody or persuade somebody that your organization deserves funding. And if you do any fundraising, if you hear me teach about fundraising, I'll often mention the case statement as the very first step. So the very first step is not to just ask people for money. The first step is to figure out what you're even asking for and what you're trying to do with the money. So the reason why I said the benefit of grant writing is having you write this out is a lot of people don't do the case statement first. A lot of people don't understand that they need to do the case statement, but they do understand that they need to write a grant. They do understand that they should have grants for their nonprofit. That's automatically where people go. So what happens is, by default, you end up doing a lot of what is required in developing a case statement when you write your grant, when you're writing that proposal. And it forces you to sit down and think about, why is this important? And how can I persuade somebody so that they would be willing to give money to this idea, to this project? Does it make sense, y'all? I hope I brought it on around. So the point of all of me saying this is, you should be able to describe in writing what you do and why you do it. You should be able to make a case. You should back it up with data and statistics. You should be able to connect the reason for your programming to what you do. You should be able to justify why you design your program the way you did, because there's a certain way you need to serve your population. You design your program a certain way. Well, break that down. Talk about why that's needed. Talk about why you organize the program the way it is. And as you get used to writing and getting better at describing that, you're only going to get better at fundraising and asking for money. So doing that upfront work, even though it seems like a lot, even though it seems tedious to bring in data and look at research to justify what you're doing for your programs, it really, really is important for you to do that first step. If you need help organizing that piece, like justifying the work that you're doing, a lot of that is done in a need statement in a grant proposal. And I actually did a video breaking it down, helping you figure out how to write your need statement. So if you need help with that, check out the video that I'm linking above, and it will walk you through step by step. The second benefit to writing grants yourself is that you get really good at writing out your programs succinctly. You get really good at getting to the point. So for a lot of grant proposals, there are limits in what you're able to say. And if you're doing like an online application, a lot of times there's literally a certain number of characters. It's not even words, it's characters that you can't go over when you are putting in your justification for your program. So sometimes, for a lot of you guys, and me too, because when I write, I tend to be long-winded, you want to talk about everything under the sun. Right? And I think subconsciously we think that the more we write, the more sophisticated we seem, or the more we write, the smarter we seem, or the more we fill in words and use fancy adjectives, we sound smart. And somehow, if the person reading the proposal thinks we sound smart, then they'll have confidence that we can do the work that we're saying we're going to do in the proposal. But that's actually not the right way to think about it, because the person reading the grant proposal, if they can't even understand what you're trying to say because you're using too many words, then it's actually, they don't think you're going to be able to do it well. They can't make out what you're saying, and it becomes a hassle and a burden to actually read through everything that you put on the proposal. So when you make it hard for the person on the other end to even understand what you're trying to say, right, and you're not getting to the point, you're not getting to the meat, then you're actually shooting yourself in the foot. So this is my piece of advice when you're writing a grant proposal. Get right to the point, use active voice, use as little amount of words as possible to describe what you're doing and to get to the point. Sometimes you have word limits and you have no choice to do that, but sometimes even if there are no limits, you don't want to submit an overwhelming proposal to people who are human, to people who are reading multiple proposals at one time. You don't want to overwhelm them with information where they get lost in the information. So benefit of you writing grants yourself is that exercise of having to pare down what you say to get to exactly what you're trying to get across is very, very helpful. When people are confused, they're not going to give. And that's for individuals, that's for funders. Just imagine this. You are a grant funder. You're trying to give away, let's just say $100,000. Are you going to really decide to give that amount of money to an organization where you can't even figure out what they're trying to do with the money? I'm just saying, I'm just trying to make it as real as possible so you get it. It's not about looking smart or sounding smart or looking flashy, right? Like having a flashy proposal. A lot of times, they don't even see that. A lot of times, the people who are actually making decisions for the grants don't always see what you initially submit, like if you're submitting hard copies. Because the point of it all is they have a process that they have to use. And whatever slows down their process isn't helpful. So you thinking about all the wrong things, all the flashy things, things looking cute is not the right attitude to have. Your attitude should be, how can I be as clear and as direct as possible so someone who is on a 5th grade reading level can understand what I'm trying to say? Or if someone who has no clue about the type of work that I do, if they read my proposal, can they tell me what I'm doing? Can they explain to me the point of my program? So that's how you need to look at it. And grant writing is so great because it forces you to think, and it changes your writing that way so you can get right to the point. And the last benefit of writing grants yourself is it helps you to focus on data and outcomes. So when you typically get a full grant proposal to write, there's going to be a question about what outcomes are you trying to impact, or what success you've had, or how are you measuring outcomes? It's going to be a combination of some of those questions. And the point of that is the grant funder wants to see, are you measuring to see whether or not your program is effective, whether or not your program is having some kind of impact. So at some basic level, you should be tracking or understanding what you're trying to change or what you're trying to better as a result of your program's activities. So a lot of times when people start their nonprofits, they're so focused on doing the work that they don't know or realize that they sometimes have to prove that the work they're doing matters. Because we get we're so attached to our missions, right? And so, of course, we're doing the right thing. Of course, we see the smiles on the faces of the people we serve. Of course, we see the stories of people doing better off. But if you are not capturing that information, if you're not quantifying it in some way, because I know sometimes it's hard to quantify successes, but in some way, if you're not quantifying it or at least writing it down, then nobody else is going to know. Nobody else has the attachment to the program and the work that you do the way you do. So you're making assumptions when you think that everybody should just get it, when you're not taking time to show, no, this is really what it looks like when change happens. So my advice to you is don't get so caught up in the doing and forget that you also have to show proof, show the outcome, the impact of the work that you're doing. And if we go just to the basics of what we understand about why people give, a big reason why people give is because they feel like their gift is making an impact. So they need to hear from you and know that when they give money to you, it's going to contribute to an impact. And if you're not tracking outcomes, if you're not looking at data for your programs, then how are you going to show that to them? How are you going to give them that sense of confidence that once they give, they're going to give because they're helping somebody else? So the reason why I'm saying this is that when you're writing a grant proposal, a lot of times they're forcing you to develop outcomes. They're forcing you to write down what you measure in terms of success. And a lot of times people have not even thought about that until they write a grant proposal. And it's not until they see that question that they're then prompted to think about, how are we measuring our success? Now, here's the thing though, and I get it because I've been in your shoes before. Sometimes when you see a grant proposal and they ask questions and it's like, let me just figure out what to write to satisfy this grantor. Right? I'm just trying to satisfy it so I can just at least finish the application or finish the proposal. That's the reality. But I do think that some of the questions that are asked are really helpful for you to get clear on your programming and why you do what you do. And to be real, like if you want to get substantial money from grant funders, then you have to start measuring your success. You have to do program evaluation. You're going to have to do some research. If you really want to get like into the millions of dollars and people investing in your program, you got to be able to show research and the success of your program. And it all starts with, what are your outcomes? Who are you helping and how are they different? Who or what are you helping and how are they different? And you set out those outcomes so you can say for yourself, these are the different outcomes that we believe that our program is going to make better or change, right? And by measuring that and looking at that, we're going to be able to show that yes, our program does make a difference because we're changing these outcomes. So I hope that makes sense. So it's really important for you to pay attention to what you're being asked in grant proposals, because a lot of times, so sometimes the questions are a little frivolous. Sometimes the questions are a little ridiculous, but sometimes they're really meaningful and they can prompt you as a founder to really take a hard look at what you're doing and get more serious about your work and how you're thinking about your programs. So I promised to leave you with my piece of advice. I am Mrs. Rogers today, giving you my lasting piece of advice before you end this video. And I'll just say this, a big mistake I see people making when they go after grants, especially when they're new and small, is they go immediately for a federal government grant. A lot of people who are not used to grants think that the only place to find grant opportunities is grants.gov, so grants.gov. So they think and they assume that that's where all the money is. They assume sometimes that the only grants that are given are through the government, which is not true. And so they will automatically go to grants.gov, look at the announcements, see the amount of money that they're throwing out there. Sometimes it's in the millions, and they immediately start applying for those grants. And if it was me, I would never start there. First of all, those grants are so difficult to complete. There's so much paperwork, so much expectations as a part of the grants. And a lot of times those grants require collaboration. And when you're super new, you often don't have that in place. And you often don't have the infrastructure to be able to write those grants. The other piece of it is that if you get the grant, you got to have the infrastructure to maintain it. You got to do grant reporting. You probably have to go through an audit, and audits are thousands of dollars. So you have to think about, do you even have the resources and the capacity to even be able to accept the money, which is a big deal. And there are so many other ways to get grants. You can start small and then build yourself up, instead of going directly to writing a federal government grant all by yourself and writing that grant directly. And the other thing about this is you can still access federal government money through other means. So there's a lot of money that comes from the federal government that flows to the states and flows to your locality. And even though local and state government grants are prohibitive too, there are a lot of paperwork, they're not as bad as the federal government grants. So, and a lot of times people don't know about local government grant opportunities, and so the competition can be less. So my advice to you is to start small. Start in your local area. Look for the local money, or money that is flowing through local entities like a local government agency, and get grants that way. Look at your local foundations. Look at the foundations that are geographically located in your area. Look at organizations that have a presence in your area, especially large corporations. They probably have a foundation or a fund where they specifically give just to nonprofits in that local area. And if a lot of people don't know about them, then the competition is not very stiff. So start small, start local, identify the local money, and then start going bigger. But make sure you have the capacity to even apply for the federal government grants and maintain them. I hope this was helpful, y'all. If you need like a primer of the whole grant writing process, so how to find grants, how to write them, what's your timeline for that, some resources, then I invite you to check out my grants masterclass, where I broke it down. I talked for over 2 hours about the grant writing process, and I have a bunch of resources included with the masterclass. So I'm going to link that below. If you just need help with your nonprofit, don't forget to go to bossonabudget.com. I have resources there available for you. There are some free resources and there are paid resources. And if you want to talk to me, or you want to have a consultation with me, my line is open. I'm also including links below for that. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.